Hello everyone, it's Jamie and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another cross-stitching video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about something that is not cross-stitch progress related. I'm not going to be showing any progress. Instead, I wanted to talk about something that I have seen going on with a couple of different stitch-alongs in the community, and it has made me think, are cross-stitching companies ruining stitch-alongs and losing trust in the community, which is us, we the stitchers? Are they losing our trust? Because recently I have seen two stitch-alongs where there have been some feelings from the people who have participated, and the two that I am referencing is, number one is the HADE 2026 stitch along, which HADE stands for Heaven and Earth Designs, and they just started their stitch along at the beginning of the year, and a lot of people joined because they wanted this exclusive Amy Stewart chart, and they were told that to get the chart you had to stitch one page of the design that you had picked for the stitch along, and then anyone who finished that page would get this exclusive chart. Well, they ended up just releasing the chart to everyone, which is, a very nice thing to do, but some people felt like they just kind of wanted to take people's money and then just throw the stuff at them and then kind of be done with it, because the way they're running the stitch along this year, they are not releasing sections of a chart. They sent the full chart at once, and then they gave everyone this Amy Stewart chart. So they wanted to label this a stitch along, but they really just kind of took people's money, which was, I think, a higher price. I think it was $20. I don't know how much it was the other years. And then they were like, here's your charts and go, which if they wanted to do it that way, they really could have just put a listing on their website, like $20 for this exclusive Amy Stewart chart, and not tried to sell it as like a stitch along reward, And then the other one is Bella Filipina, which they had a mermaid stitch along last year, I think, and there were some people who were not happy with the way it looked last year, and it also cost $45. And then they just recently released a updated version where they changed the skin tones and added more things like what people had suggested they do from the stitch along, and they are now selling that for $40. So some people paid more for a chart that had less things, and they are obviously now not happy with the fact that like a newer chart has been released. And Bella Filipina's response was basically that when you do a stitch along, you don't know what you're gonna get, which I understand, but to take people's criticisms and then release a new chart that has addressed their criticism, and then instead of offering them the new chart, they instead sent an email where they could get a discount off of the stitch along, which they already spent $45, and now this new chart is $40, which is already a fairly high price for a cross-stitching chart, in my opinion. And so it just brings up the question of, are designers losing our trust with these stitch-alongs by just changing things? And I get that, like, for HADE, they thought that it was a nice thing to do, probably to just give it to everyone, but if it's supposed to be a reward, and then some people are just not even going to stitch their chart anymore, because I saw that many people were joining the HADE 2026 stitch along just for that Amy Stewart chart. They were like, I'm gonna stitch one page of the chart that I picked and then get this Amy Stewart chart, and then they're just given it. And so it's like they didn't even necessarily want to join the stitch along, but HADE kind of baited people with this Amy Stewart chart, and they really could have just, like I said, put a listing up on their website for the HADE chart, the Amy Stewart chart, for $20. They could have been like, buy this Amy Stewart chart for $20. They would have had so many sales. They didn't even have to put it in with a stitch along, because a lot of people were not a fan of their artwork, which also, another thing going into this is designers losing our trust, is the AI. Is the HADE stitch along had so much AI. The other pieces that weren't AI were a lot of older artwork, which it's copyright free. Anyone could chart the older artwork. And so I really feel like they were trying to do this stitch along where they were putting in little money themselves on the artwork AI, older pieces, and then baiting people with the Amy Stewart chart. And obviously it worked, and then they just gave it to everyone. But yeah, like I said, some people were just disappointed because they expected more of like a fun time of like, oh, I did this, I earned this. And then the stitch along version, like I said, it's just kind of taken away when you give everyone everything at once. It's kind of like, what's the point of like, there's a Hey 2026 Facebook group. What's the point of even being there if you've already got what you came for, and you kind of lose the community stitch along aspect of the whole process? I don't know. But yeah, it's just really begging the question of, are designers listening to the people, or are they just thinking about money for themselves? Which I get, they are a company. It seems like it's hard to talk about because we are so close with the companies. We are in groups with the owners. And so if we say something bad, the owner will see it, and you don't want to hurt people's feelings. But at the same point, it is a business transaction. We are giving them money. They are providing a product. And if they are going to start offering like inferior products or inferior services, then we should be able to say, this is not what we want. And then also not be silenced, because with AI, a lot of the times if you mention AI in the comments of something, it'll just get deleted. The companies don't want to hear pushback. And with this Bella Filipina, they turned off their comments on their Instagram post, and I think they turned off their comments on their Facebook post where they addressed it. And so they think that they can just say their statement and then silence everyone else. Like that's it. And it's like, if that's what they want to do, they can do that. But at the same point, we as a community can still talk together. Like that's what this video is kind of like talking as friends. I'm a stitcher, you're a stitcher, and just see what everyone else is feeling. I had went to edit the video and remembered something else to mention with the whole Hey stitch alongs. So one thing is, I went and looked back at the prices of the previous stitch alongs, and the 2024 stitch along was $10, the 2025 was $15, and then the one for 2026 was, I'm fairly sure, $20. So the price has doubled since 2024. And one thing to mention is, in 2024, you had your choice of the 10 charts. You picked which one you wanted to stitch, and then at the end of the year, if you had stitched 4 pages, you would get all of the other stitch along charts that were available, which someone broke it down to where, you know, if at the end of the year you end up getting all the charts, you've basically paid about $1 per chart. 10 charts, $10. Well, then something that happened during the 2024 stitch along is one of the artists that was part of the stitch along was retired from HAID, which meant that the piece that was part of the stitch along, it was a rainbow dragon, was not going to be available anymore for participants at the end of the year. And so they instead made an AI chart that they included to replace it, which was like an AI gnome, which is like, I didn't sign up to get an AI chart. The reason I had signed up for that stitch along was because at the time that stitch along had no AI. The artwork was from Amy Stewart, Chiro Marchetti, and I can't remember the other artist was the one that was retired. Rachel Anderson? I don't know. Yeah, there was another artist who did the Rainbow Dragon, and she was retired. And so it had no AI artwork, and then all of a sudden they replaced the Rainbow Dragon with AI art, and they were so kind to offer people, I think they could buy the Rainbow Dragon before it retired, the stitch along one, for $10, which did not make any sense because, like, someone had done the calculations. If at the end of the year we get all the charts because we completed the 4 pages, that would be $1 per chart. So telling people who have already paid $10 to join the stitch along that if they want this chart, like, you have to pay another 10, it just seemed like all they really cared about was just like, give us more money and we'll give you this chart that was supposed to be included to people who signed up for the stitch along. This video has probably been kind of all over the place because I didn't really plan ahead of time, but it really just got me thinking when I started seeing the stuff going on with Bella Filipina, and then at the same time hearing some people who are participating in the HAID stitch along and their opinions. at what point will designers ever listen to us, the consumers, you know, because we are the ones who are buying the products. We stitch the products. We tell our friends about what we're stitching, our stitchy friends. And so they are losing our, you know, my trust anyways. Like, I don't know if I would want to join a stitch along with, you know, the way that things are being handled and just the way that companies just are handling things in general when they just want to delete problems people have, because I've heard people talk about that before. Like, I had a problem with this chart with this company and then they deleted my comment and they just try and act like it didn't happen, and it's not okay. They are a business and we have given them money for a product and they don't seem to want to stick up, you know, and give people a decent product. That's what we're asking for. Anyways, that's all that I have for this video. I will be back hopefully soon with an update video and I will see you all then. Bye!